Hello, I'm Nobby. Welcome to my workshop. Recently I've been trying to tick off some of the projects off my workshop project list. One item that I've wanted to make for quite a long time is a second lathe tool height setting gauge for my Chinese mini lathe. I already have this one, which I made a few years ago now, before I actually had a YouTube channel, so there's nothing of this been filmed, obviously. This is made from a Hemingway kit. You get the material and all the plans to make these. And it does actually come with two little indicator arms here, so that you can use this on the lathe from a couple of different positions. I tend to use this mounted onto the ways of the lathe to measure off and set the tool heights, but it's of course possible to also use it on the top of the cross slide to do the same job, and I guess that's why the kit has parts to make two of the little indicator arms. So for this project I'm going to use the additional arm, save making one of these. So I've checked around the workshop to see what bits of material I've got that I could possibly make this out of. Unfortunately I didn't have a piece of silver steel like this of the same diameter. And I really want to use what materials I already have. I've got this piece of silver steel, which is slightly bigger in diameter to this one. This is about 17 thousandths of an inch bigger in diameter than this, so this will need to be turned down to the same diameter. What I didn't want to do was drill out the pointer here to take this rod, because if I wanted to use this back onto the Hemingway one again, I wouldn't be able to do that, and I wasn't particularly worried about making another one of these pointers. I wanted this to be a simple sort of one afternoon project. So I've got my piece of material for the column. For the base I've got no cast iron at all, so I searched around and I found this disc of steel. I think this is stainless material. I'll explain more about this later on. It already has a hole drilled in it and a countersink on the back here, and I found a little 5mm countersunk screw. Don't have very many countersunk screws at all, so that will pop in here and will sit nicely below the base of the bottom here. So that's basically all I need. There's just the three bits of material and the pointer I already have. There of course are many ways of setting the tool height. This can be done very, very simply by just revolving the tool post around and then just lining up the top of the tool against the dead centre in the tailstock. That's obviously the simplest way of doing it. It's quite a fiddly thing to do if you've got a lot of tools to adjust, so having sort of one device set to the right height, which can be brought across the top of the tool, is, if anything, is the simplest way of doing it. I did some time back make another tool setting device, this one, which uses a tiny spirit level. I think I did make a video on this actually. So you've got a little spigot which goes into the lathe chuck. The tool will fit onto here, and that gives you a sort of swivelling motion. And generally the way to use this is to use this with a tool which has already been set to the correct height. Bring that down onto the top of the tool, like that, and then slacken off this little screw here and adjust that part until the bubble in the spirit level centres up. And then on subsequent tools you do basically the same thing, bring this down on the tool, but then raise and lower the tool to zero up the spirit level again. I mean, this works very well. I don't use this very much. I use it mostly on the Chinese mini lathe, because what I didn't want to do is keep readjusting this one to use on the Myford lathe and the Chinese mini lathe. Once I've got this set and locked in place, it doesn't really need to be ever moved again, although occasionally I do always check this to make sure that this is absolutely at the correct height. I don't think I've ever had to adjust it. It always seems to remain in position all the time, and I keep this very carefully in a little box all the time underneath the lathe so that it doesn't get knocked or anything while it's being stored. So there we are, just a few parts here. There's only going to be 4 parts involved in this, so I hope you'll follow along with me while I make this. The first bit obviously will be machining this down to diameter. It only needs a piece, I don't know, 6 inches long, something like that. It doesn't actually need to be that long at all. It could be made out of a much shorter piece, I guess, but I'm going to make it sort of near to the height of this one. Gives you sort of a little gripping area on the top of this to move it around. So let's get this set up in the lathe and get on with our little project. Well, as I mentioned, I didn't have a piece of material of the right diameter, so the only option really was to turn a piece of material down. This is a piece of silver still of rather an indeterminate size that some years back I bought a bundle of silver steel at one of the model engineering shows, a bit of a hodgepodge of sizes, and none of them were sort of like, if you like, regular imperial sizes, but in this case it didn't matter. It needed only needed a small amount removed. I had to bring it down to 312 thousandths. You see, I've used a steady on here as well to hold the material in place, because obviously you're going to get some flexing in this. Likelihood is that you're going to get a very big difference in reading from one end to the other. I didn't show this, but as an experiment I made one pass without the steady in place, and there was quite a big difference. So I've installed this, and I've made a couple of passes along this now. I doubt that I'm going to get it exactly right, but if I get it sort of reasonably near, I'll be quite happy. That's measuring a thou under 311. Here it's measuring just a fraction over 311. And oddly enough, a fraction under on this side as well. But I think for the purpose, this is going to be okay, because I don't need the whole length of this. In fact, I imagine that the indicator will be more or less about the middle of this, I would think. So this is probably going to be okay. Let's try the indicator on. As I mentioned, this is the spare one. Well, not the spare one. I think the tool height gauge had two of these, possibly for measuring off two different machines, which is what I'm going to be doing anyway, or measuring the height from perhaps different positions on the lathe, perhaps from the top of the cross slide or from the ways of the lathe. And I tend to always measure from the ways on the Myford. Actually fits on sort of quite nicely. It's a decent sliding fit. It's going to be around about here, I reckon, that it will be positioned. Obviously the locking screw will lock that in nice and tight anyway. It's going to hold pretty well, I think. So I think that's going to be okay. Obviously I just need to cut this down to length and then work out a way of attaching this to the base that I found. So I think that will be okay. What I'll probably do first is, it's not bad actually, but not the most fantastic finish. And I didn't really have a high-speed steel tool that I could have easily got into the space that I've got here next to the revolving steady. There wasn't really enough room to get the only high-speed one I've really got in here, so I used the carbide tool. But what I'll do is I'll just give this a bit of a clean up with a bit of Scotch Brite. Might be able to improve the finish a bit, but I think that's going to be okay. So I'll bring you back for a bit more. Right, what I've got to do now is tap this whole 5mm for the screw, locking screw. I completely forgot to switch the camera on properly to record drilling the tapping drill sized hole in this. I'm sure you've seen holes drilled many times before, but of course I drilled it 4.2 for a 5mm tap. Sorry about that, but at least now we get to the bit of actually tapping the hole. So I've got a 5mm tap in my tailstock tap and die holder here, and I don't know how difficult this is going to be to tap, being that it's silver still, but let's see how we get on with it. What I'll do is bring a bit more pressure onto the tap if I can. The tap seems to be going in, I think. I've put plenty of cutting compound on the tap, which I hope's going to help. Let's take that back. Yep. I hope that's going to be okay. Let's take that in again. Doesn't really need a very deep thread, I don't think, for this. And that's the sort of full length of that tap anyway. Let's find that out. Oh, I think we've got a thread in there. It looks like it. Yeah, I think we're okay. I'll just clean that out, and we'll have a look and see. We'll try the screw in that, make sure it goes in okay. We'll just go in with a bottoming tack, just to make absolutely sure everything's okay. Don't really think this is going to be necessary, but we may as well. Does no harm. Okay, let's get the tail stuck out the way. Get that off. There we go. The screw. Oh, I don't know, it's going to go all the way in there. I thought that may have been too long, but it seems to be okay. It's lucky I was able to use that. I think the 5mm ones are the only countersunk screws I've got anywhere near this size. And let's try the part on. I'll go on there, and so I showed you this piece earlier on. I don't know what this was from. Years back I picked up a whole load of bits of scrap material, mostly steel, stainless steel, which is possible this might be stainless, and this was among it. I've got no idea what it was off. I didn't machine it. In fact, this is the second time this is being used. I did use this some years back when I was making a little engine, and I used this as the flywheel. I had to put a little plug in the hole here to take a small shaft, but then later on I changed it for a sort of a nicer flywheel. So this is the second time round for this. All I've done with this basically is just cleaned up both sides on some emery paper on a very flat surface. So let's pop this on. And just put the screw in there. There we are. That fits on quite nicely, I think. Right, before you ask, these nice colourful Allen keys. I've got a set of these. Really nice, and don't ask, these are not wearer Allen keys. These came from, in the UK we have a store called Aldi, and one of their brands is Workzone, and they were doing these quite nice sets of colourful Allen keys, a standard end, and they also have a ball end so that you can tighten and untighten Allen head screws at an angle. As much as I'd like to own a set of wearer German-made Allen keys, that's not going to happen. Anyway, so that's that. This thing almost done, basically. I think I've only got one thing that I want to do, and obviously I've got to take the base off this again. Is just to take the sharp edge off the other end of this. Perhaps sort of, round that over a bit with a file as well, just make it look a little bit nicer rather than leave this real sharp edge to it. But we're sort of nearly there with this, basically. But I'll bring you back for just completing the end, and then basically the job's done, and we can have a look at this later on the lathe. I'm making this one, I don't know if I mentioned, this one is going to be for the Chinese mini lathe, and the other one I have this one, which was made from a Hemingway kit, which just happened to have two of these little indicators on it. So the other one I'm obviously going to be using on this one. It's not quite as elegant as this one. This has got a very, very heavy cast iron base to it, but this I think that's going to do the job quite nicely anyway. So I'll bring you back a bit later on. Well, that's the job basically completed. That just pops into there, and we use our little 5mm countersunk screw into there. Now I've just got to find what I did with the little pointer. Looking around here somewhere. There we are. So that will pop on there, at the top there, and we can then set that to whatever height's required. So it's turned out okay, just basically made out of lots of scrap pieces of material, as lots of things are, and that's the Hemingway kit that I built some years ago. Won't play with that because that's already set to the correct tool height. So what I'll do now is I'll just take this over to the Chinese mini lathe, and we'll set this up against one of the tools and see how it looks. Pretty obviously these things are always made too long. It doesn't really matter. and obviously I didn't have to remake that, you know. But I suppose I could make another one of these up, but no point really. I'm getting out of that kit. I'm virtually getting two tool height gauges for one, basically. But there we are. I'll bring you back in a bit once we've brought this up against the tool in the other lathe. Okay, we're at the Chinese mini lathe, which you don't get to see very often. I've put one of the tools in position here. I mean, normally when I've set these, I normally set them against a dead centre, so that this one obviously is already set correctly. And you know, what I do periodically with both lathes is go through all the lathe tools I'm using to sort of check them all out, make sure they're all on centre, so that I can sort of work more quickly. I don't have to sort of keep checking every time I make a tool change. So this one is in the correct position. For this lathe, because it doesn't have a completely flat bed, it has a raised sort of triangular part, this sort of step on the bed here. I guess you could probably still get this tool in position, but I think as this one has got a nice flat surface on the cross slide, we could set the tool to that. We can either set it by bringing that down against the tool, or set it against a tool that's already known to be at the correct centre height. This one. Oops, I've not locked it tight enough. Let's do that again. Bring that down on there and tighten that in. That's better. Bring it round here. I'm probably not doing this as accurately as I would normally do it, because when I set the tool height, I always go in very close with a magnifier just to make sure I've got everything lined up perfectly. But as my eyes are at the moment, it looks okay, and then that can be checked against the surface of any of the new tools I put into position. So I think that's going to work out quite nicely, and I can keep this one with all the accessories that I've got for the mini lathe. If you can see that okay. We're in the furthest end of the workshop at the moment, right against the back opposite end of the door. This is probably a slightly darker end. I had to sort of switch the workshop round quite a bit and move the Chinese lathe here when I was trying to sort of get myself as much room in the workshop as I possibly could. This lathe sadly doesn't get as much use as it should do. I should use this a lot more, but I love using the Myford lathe mostly, but this one, you know, is a good standby one to have, so I think that's going to work out quite nicely for me. I mean, this tool I use quite a lot, so it's probably still okay, although as I said, I haven't used this lathe for a little while, so I probably need to recheck the tools I've got for this. I haven't got as many tools on hand for this lathe as I have for the Myford lathe, and occasionally for some sort of specialist tools I have to borrow some from the Myford lathe. I've got, you know, sort of a few similar tools to the ones I use on that. Let's this one with the button insert, chamfering tool and so forth, all the sort of the usual ones. And what I've got already mounted up for this are the ones that I use the most. Anyway, that's it. That was just a quick little project to make this height gauge, but I will check this more thoroughly later on and make sure I've got everything set right, because I say these might be slightly out, as I've not used this lathe for quite a few months now. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed seeing that. It was something a little bit different, but I've been meaning to do this for quite a long time, to make this, because the Hemingway one, I couldn't use that for both lathes, because this indicator part would be very, very close to both of them really. So obviously this part would clash with the one on the other Hemingway one. You see I've got little brass screws on here so the screw doesn't damage the column of this at all. So there we are. Anyway, thanks for joining me in the workshop, and thank you again to all the subscribers to the channel, and hope to have another video for you very, very soon. So bye bye for now.